What's up guys, welcome back to a new video. Today I'm reviewing the first manga series in Grappler Baki titled Grappler Baki. This was my first official read through from start to finish. Prior to this I only watched the first two seasons of the anime which covered this manga series and just read random parts here and there because the translation wasn't fully out at my point when I was reading it, but now that the translation is fully out, I decided to read it from start to finish for the first official time, and here is my review. As a whole, I had 371 chapters and it was broken up into 3 different parts. Part 1 was pretty much 17-year-old Baki getting to know him, getting to see some fights. Second part was a flashback to younger Baki and then 13-year-old Baki training, getting stronger, and then ending with a dramatic moment. And then part 3 was pretty much the maximum tournament which concluded the manga series. So at the start of the manga, Baki was already champion of the underground tournament and had a numerous amount of wins. And throughout this time we get to see some of his school life, some of, his fights in the maximum tournament, such against the cord cutter, the doctor, and some other interesting fights. Nothing too special, most of them were relatively easy for Baki, and this part was probably the weakest part of the manga series in my opinion. At least the starting parts of it, but we did get some interesting stuff regarding Motobe and Dopporochi. This is where they get the most shine throughout that manga series and pretty much in the whole manga series in my opinion. And this pretty much part 1 ends with the fight of Dopporochi versus YUJIRO, which was a pretty good fight. We got to see Dopporochi's pretty decent power at this point. I would consider this a more prime Dopporochi compared to later Dopporochis we see throughout the story, with him actually being able to damage YUJIRO throughout this fight and force YUJIRO to unleash the demon back to win the fight. But the conclusion of this fight was pretty much Dopporochi getting destroyed, with one of his eyes getting destroyed by YUJIRO and him actually being killed, but later on was saved by the doctor, who was barely able to save Dopporochi. So that was the conclusion of part 1 of Grappler Baki in my opinion, with the breakup I talked about earlier. Pretty decent part. We got to see some shine of Baki. We got to see how much of a monster YUJIRO is, with some parts prior to the fight with Doppo, him just going into a random boxing gym, locking everyone in there and just wiping everyone out with absolute ease. It's absolutely craziness. Got to see some pretty good fights with Baki against Toba, cord cutter, doctor, some other dudes. Pretty cool stuff. But now on to part 2, which in my opinion was the best part of Grappler Baki. The flashback starts with Baki facing 100 teenagers on his own and actually being able to defeat 30 of them with 100 plus people coming at him, which is pretty impressive. We get to see his mother and how his mother doesn't really care whatsoever about Baki and only does everything for Baki for the sake of him getting stronger so he can fight YUJIRO, so YUJIRO can get what she wants. And Baki at this point doesn't really care, but we get a glimpse that Baki wants to get stronger but really just wants love from his mother at this point, and realizes the only way he can recede if he gets stronger so he can actually fight YUJIRO to make YUJIRO happy, which will in turn make his mother happy, and etc. So Baki decides to ignore all the gym training his mother's provided for him and everything else to go into the mountains and train alone there. This is where we get some flashbacks with actually a younger Baki, maybe 5 or 6, with YUJIRO talking to him, telling him some secrets of training and actually demonstrating some stuff, such as YUJIRO going to a dark cave and then fighting all these bats and etc, stuff like that. But it's also good to note, prior to this, and the main reason Baki decided to go train by himself is because he was defeated by a boxer, and with this defeat he realized that his power is nowhere near enough, so he had to do some special training alone. During his time in the mountains training, he starts activating his endorphins to get buffs in power when in crucial moments, and this is where he has his long drawn out battles against the Yasha ape, a huge ape whose partner was actually killed by YUJIRO, I believe 10 years earlier than this. We have Baki actually fighting the Yasha ape. It was actually a pretty underrated fight in my opinion. I've only seen the anime version of this prior and I really enjoyed the crazy impactful fight Baki had with the Yasha ape throughout multiple chapters and multiple fights as well, which is pretty good, with Baki actually able to defeat the Yasha ape and actually befriend him and actually give the skull back of the Yasha ape's, I believe, husband or wife, I can't quite remember, the one that YUJIRO killed prior, and return it to him to set the bond of the Yasha ape with the humans free or something along those lines. But yeah, showing that Baki isn't a monster like YUJIRO and actually doesn't want to kill people for enjoyment. And after this is where Baki gets his first major boost in power, going back to his school, being able to just destroy anyone who he had trouble with prior. And this is where we get the next build up of fights and, you know, challenges for Baki to face. He ends up fighting Hanayama. Hanayama's mother dies. He has a rage and decides to fight Baki. This is where they have their long drawn out fight, which was a pretty decent fight in my opinion. I really enjoyed it. I had read parts of that prior, or I had read the manga version of that fight prior, but I enjoyed rereading the Hanayama vs Baki fight pretty good. It demonstrated how much raw talent Baki actually possesses inside his Hanma blood, and actually demonstrated that he can actually outmatch Hanayama when it comes to raw physical power, which is just absolutely insane at this point in the series. Prior to this, we did get some other glimpses of Hanayama's power, just absolutely rolling people in some other minor fights of Baki. And then after this, or prior to this, I don't exactly remember, but we have YUJIRO torturing Baki by killing the Yasha ape that Baki befriended in the arc prior, which destroyed Baki, led him into a rage, and when Baki tried attacking YUJIRO, YUJIRO just disappeared and hit leg before Baki could do anything, and that destroyed Baki somewhat. From this point, it was preparation for the Baki vs YUJIRO fight, which concluded at the end of this arc, and for Baki to get more powerful, he needed to fight someone that was meant to be close to YUJIRO's level. And at this point in the story, it was stated that Gaia was actually the closest person or on par with YUJIRO, even though they had never battled in the past. This turned out to be false, so we did get an interesting battle between Baki and Gaia and some of other Gaia's men, which was about 20 chapters, maybe a little bit longer. Pretty good fight. We got to see everything Gaia was truly capable of, with him actually choking out or killing Baki during their fight, but due to Endorphin's Hanma blood, Baki was able to pretty much revive himself with a buff and defeat Gaia. But honestly, a very good fight, and I really enjoyed that. And this is where we had the build up to the final fight between Baki and YUJIRO. Prior to this, you know, for YUJIRO to demonstrate his power, he got Gaia to fight him. He destroyed Gaia off screen. We get to see him at the back during their fight at the start. It's absolutely destroyed. We got Hanayama, everyone else Baki had fought on the way on Baki's side to watch the big fight go down, and of course Baki's mother on YUJIRO's side as always. We learned prior to this that Baki still only wanted love from his mother, and this fight was going to showcase that he has actually developed strong enough to face YUJIRO, and she would actually give Baki the love she promised him if he's able to actually do something against YUJIRO. But it only wasn't on Baki to get stronger, because YUJIRO threatened her for Baki to get stronger or something was going to happen to her. The fight starts with Baki just getting absolutely rolled by YUJIRO, but before I mention that, we have the almighty earthquake punch by YUJIRO. Right before the fight's going to start, an earthquake starts, YUJIRO goes into a rage, punches the ground, and the earthquake stops, and that's the origin of YUJIRO's earthquake punch, never seen again. But yeah, the fight starts, Baki gets absolutely rolled, starts punching YUJIRO with all his force, can't do anything, and this gets absolutely destroyed. And while this is happening, while Baki's mother is seeing her son getting destroyed by his father, she decides to try and save him. She like snaps, her motherly instincts kick in, and she realizes she's been following a monster this whole time, and that she should have been supporting her son and should have, you know, ignored YUJIRO and whatever he wanted. She throws a punch at YUJIRO, her arm snapped because of course YUJIRO is way too durable to get a punch from her, and then YUJIRO decides to snap her back, in turn killing her with zero effort, and then she falls on top of an unconscious Baki and decides to sing a lullaby as she dies. And then after this, everyone else who's actually watching the fight on Baki's side decides to go and fight YUJIRO. Everyone watching gets just absolutely wiped and destroyed by YUJIRO. Everyone is knocked out but Baki's mother, who's still singing the lullaby to a knocked out Baki. And then the final chapter of this arc, the most emotional chapter in the whole series in my opinion, we have Baki carrying his mother on his back, seems to be having a conversation with her. It seems to be morning after the fight concluded, and then as Baki's talking to her, we get police starting to follow Baki around her, and then we realize that Baki has been talking to his dead mother that he's carrying around on his back, and we see Baki crying with the following statement: "Please let me continue dreaming a little more," and that is the end of that arc. And then we cut back to the present, but we do get one extra flashback, which was Baki going to the underground tournament guy and begging for him to enter the underground tournaments. And then what we know from the start of Baki, that Baki ended up winning all his fights, becoming the champion. And then we have the setup for the maximum tournament. So the maximum tournament arc, a lot of decent fights, a lot of not so decent fights. It starts off with the build up of Katsumi. We got Dopporochi saying he's the prodigy, the person who's gonna bring karate to the top martial art in the world and everyone respects respecting him and everything regarding that. We got introduction of RETSU Kyle supporting his Chinese Kempo like a mad lad. We got HANAYAMA entering the tournament. It seems to have got a lot more powerful since the time we saw him when Baki was 13. And we get other characters as well, such as the person known as Jack Hammer at this point, a Canadian pit fighter that we learn about, and then some other wrestlers such as Toba and some other characters we've seen prior have their battles as well. And we also get introduction to Goki as well. So we have the first couple rounds of fights, pretty easy stuff. Baki's just rolling. He actually loses against this, you know, crazy, I forgot what his fighting style was, but it was pretty much a savage beast. Actually defeats Baki but doesn't know the rules, attacked too early, and then Baki defeated him 2 times after that to declare the win. But he could have actually been defeated in the second round by that dude. We got Goki rolling people like an absolute mad lad, and then we got the best fights in the maximum tournament in my opinion. We have Dopporochi vs Goki, which in my opinion to this day is still one of the best fights in the whole series. We got RETSU and various other fighters just destroying them with him taking really no damage. We also had the Yasha Ape Jr. making his appearance during this arc, which gets pretty much knocked out and destroyed by Katsumi. We have the close fight between HANAYAMA and Katsumi, where in my opinion HANAYAMA could have defeated Katsumi multiple times at that point in the fight, but due to his fighting style he allowed Katsumi to get up, and Katsumi ended up defeating HANAYAMA very high difficulty. And we also get a new character who actually one-shotted various other characters as well, known as Gailand, a Russian character who actually one-shot a injured HANAYAMA, showing his incredible physical power. But during the tournament he ended up being defeated pretty high difficulty due to Jack. And then other fights to take note of during this tournament is Jack vs Goki, where Jack was able to defeat a highly injured Goki after Goki barely defeated Dopporochi, actually using a counter to Aikido during this fight, which is pretty impressive. We have Baki vs RETSU Kyle, where Baki actually demonstrated his image training, super imaginary stuff he's able to do prior to the fight. He had like a big practice battle against RETSU, who was actually able to defeat RETSU, and then during their fight Baki actually defeated RETSU relatively easy in my opinion. But yeah, that was that fight. We also had YUJIRO going crazy during this arc as well, defeating all these people who tried challenging him, and then YUJIRO actually getting knocked out by a sleep dart, I believe, which was a little bit weird to see YUJIRO actually being knocked out in the series, but yeah, whatever. And then apart from that, we had backstory for YUJIRO. We get to see him in the Vietnam War. This is where we get to see him meeting Jack's mother, in turn raping him at some point during the backstory, and then that's where Jack was born during prison. We have the big fight against Baki versus Jack, where Jack reveals that he is a Hanma, that they're brothers. We get pretty cool bonding moments between them. We have their top tier fight, one of the best fights in the series to this day in my opinion still. We get Baki unleashing the demon back and barely defeating Jack Hanma, very high difficulty. And then after the tournament concludes, we have an injured Jack who actually lost the effect of all his steroids he was taking, tried to face a YUJIRO and gets absolutely rolled by YUJIRO during that little, you know, punch scuffle, whatever you call it. And the end of the arc or manga series is where we actually get to see Jack's mother for the only time in the series since then, actually, you know, calling an ambulance to save Jack after his fight against YUJIRO. And yep, that is the end of Grappler Baki, and overall a solid series, a lot better than what I remember from reading bits and pieces. I really enjoyed the childhood arc or the flashback arc of 13 of Baki. The maximum timer is always great, and the earlier parts weren't the best but still pretty solid, especially the fight between Doppo and YUJIRO. But yep, that's it for today.